a batter is not a cake. Meaning, when you're in the process of becoming something, you cannot set your expectations so high you miss or don't enjoy the process. And that's part of the development and this development of resiliency. It is a process. Just like baking a cake, it takes time. And welcome to another episode of Relentlessly Resilient, presented by Miki Couture, a weekly podcast where people share real-life experiences and the tools they develop to move forward and live their best life. I am producer KellieAnn with a special Thanksgiving edition of Relentlessly Resilient. And speaking of Thanksgiving, I am grateful for our sponsors, Miki Couture. We've always discussed our love of these gorgeously soft blankets, and having them as our presenter has been wonderful this year. I personally sleep with my own Minky every day of the year, and with the holidays rolling in, it's the perfect time to give the ultimate gift of luxury, comfort, and care with the blanket, robe, and even a huggable animal blanket for your favorite little one. Now, recently, I've discovered a great way to save big on these gifts. Many of you know I host and produce KSL's Fan Effect podcast, which is sponsored by Megaplex Theaters. And through that connection, I found a discount code for you. For your next Minky purchase, when you use MEGA50 code at checkout, you'll save 50% off. Now, I don't know how long this code is going to last, so I'd get into action and use it now. Miki Couture, the ultimate luxury blankets and accessories. They're available at 6 locations in Utah and online at MikiCouture.com. You might have noticed that I'm not our host, Jenny or Michelle, but the girl behind the scenes, KellieAnn Halvorsen. And as I've come up to this holiday season, I've been going back and re-listening to past Thanksgiving and Christmas co-host conversations of Relentlessly Resilient. And I've been making some connections I just want to share with you today. So I'm grateful our hosts have let me take over this episode to share some of my own thoughts. Now, it has been a pretty contentious time in the world. World events have been terrifying, finances have become ever more difficult, political elections have caused us to become more divided than ever. And for me personally, I've been going through a long battle of chronic illness and diagnosis. Among all these trials and tribulations, it can be difficult to see hope through darkness. Added to that, as we enter the holiday season, all that associated pressure that comes along with it, our viewpoint can become even more dim. All this got me thinking about an article I wrote for the Deseret News during the pandemic. At the time, I was producing a radio talk show for KSL News Radio's Boyd Matheson, who was the opinion editor of Deseret News. That was a time of significant worry and darkness as the world was just getting used to the pandemic. And as such, we were looking for ways to lift our listeners. And as I was pitching topics that day, I couldn't help but make a connection to a science story I'd recently learned about. I shared with Boyd that COVID isn't dimming our hope, it's just obscuring our vision. He liked the pitch so much, he said he couldn't take the credit for me and had me write it up for Deseret News. Here is a portion of that story, and while it might be COVID-focused, let's mentally place that topic away and place in whatever is blocking the light in our lives at this moment. I'll make sure to link the whole article and the show copy of this episode as well. So it's called COVID-19 Isn't Dimming Our Hope, It's Just Obscuring Our Vision. The tagline, the answer to a star's dimming can shine some light on a lesson of hope in our earthly darkness. Remember, this was written 4 years ago. We are now more than 6 months from the time the World Health Organization declared the novel Corona-19 pandemic a public health emergency of international concern. The virus has dramatically changed our day-to-day behaviors, illuminated issues of inequality, and taken a toll on our collective psyche. But amid turmoil, there is always hope. Hope that can shine out in the darkest night and guide us to a better future. We can turn to the stars for a lesson of optimism from one of the most brilliant stars in our sky, Betelgeuse, and the Great Dimming. The star Betelgeuse is one of the biggest stars in our sky. Nestled on the constellation Orion, this supergiant gives off a distinctive red glow that has fascinated humanity for ages. In October 2019, Betelgeuse was observed to be noticeably dimming, and astronomers speculated if a supernovae event and the star's death was imminent. But near the end of February 2020, the star's unique brightness had returned, leaving scientists scratching their heads at the cause. Recently, scientists using NASA's Hubble telescope believe they discovered the reason for the dimming. A dense cloud of material had partially obstructed the star. Before the dimming, a large amount of hot material was released from the star's southern atmosphere that was 2 to 4 times brighter than usual on the ultraviolet light scale. As the material went out into space, it cooled, forming a carbon-thick particle cloud that made it appear to be dimming, even as the stars remained to be just as bright and active. There was no supernova, and there was no cosmic threat. There was simply something blocking our vision that then challenged us to look at the situation a different way. In our daily lives, as we struggle with the new reality of this global pandemic, and now we're in the aftermath of all that 4 years later, it is easy to perceive the world as a dark and dreary place. But is our reality dimming? No, our vision is just obscured, and we have fallen into the trap of comparing our clouds to times of extraordinary brightness. The light and stars are still there. Yes, we are embedded in a cloud of the pandemic, social upheaval and strife, but there is still light and hope in a world to be seen if we hold out for patience and look for it. This weekend on social media, President Russell M. Nelson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints posted about the positive opportunities the pandemic has provided. One positive outcome of the COVID pandemic is the tremendous opportunity for service and humanitarian work, he wrote. COVID-19 has brought about the largest humanitarian projects of the church to date. And it lists a bunch of lists there. And I'm going to interrupt here. I can't help but also think of one of my favorite people ever, Mr. Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, who in time of strifes has encouraged kids to look for the helpers, which is something we need to do right there. Let's go back into the article. People are assisting and reaching out to their fellow men like never before, truly letting their light so shine before others. While there's still darkness in 2020 and still darkness in 2024, there's also an abundance of light. Light we can seek out and share with others, even if our goals of quelling the pandemic and seeking the positive can seem unachievable. Remember what author and minister Norman Vincent Peale observed with such lofty ambitions. Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. My point here in this article in 2020 and today in 2024 is to look for the light. Reviewing the episodes of Relentlessly Resilient ahead of this recording, I saw a lot of that light. I was struck again and again at how eloquently Jenny and Michelle expressed this mindset throughout the recordings. How they can live in grief and, as Jenny says, turn it into grit and grace. And as Michelle points out, grief, sorrow leads to gratitude, and that gratitude is what leads to abundance. Today, let's look for that light of hope. To help me organize my thoughts, we are going to find them through the lens of our often referenced 6 Pillars of Resilience by Dr. Arielle Schwartz, which I will also link in our podcast copy. Those 6 Pillars of Resilience are growth mindset, emotional intelligence, community connections, self-expressions, embodiment, and the final one is choice and control. The first pillar that we're going to look at is actually growth mindset. Now, what the doctor says is it is important to cultivate an understanding that life, whether positive or negative, provides ongoing opportunities for new learning. People who remain resilient in the face of loss and tend to believe that growth and wisdom can be gained from difficult or challenging experiences. The next pillar of resilience from Dr. Arielle Schwartz is emotional intelligence. Now, that's something we talk about a lot. Dr. Schwartz says it's important to recognize that you will experience feelings of numbness, fear, and exhaustion and anger and sadness after a traumatic event. These feelings are a normal part of your innate resilience. So emotional intelligence, being aware of how you feel, is actually a very important thing when it comes to resiliency, to those pillars. Our third pillar of resilience we talk about from Dr. Schwartz is community connections. Now, connection is important. That's one reason Jenny and Michelle started this podcast, was to be able to connect with others in your experience, and to be able to have the SOS people you communicate with in order to work through these different things, those trusted individuals. Now, Dr. Schwartz says the third pillar of resilience is connection. It is essential to connect with people. Sometimes these are friends who bring a meal over or a neighbor who offers a helping hand. It is important to actively seek and build your social circle. Research suggests that resilient people stay involved in a community rather than isolated. And this is very important when it comes to the social gatherings and the family gatherings around the holiday seasons. So finding those that we can connect with is great on this holiday season. Self-expression is our fourth pillar in the 6 pillars of resiliency by Dr. Schwartz. And I kind of love this. As you know, I am a creative individual as a producer here. I love art and creativity and joy and all of that. And what Dr. Schwartz says is self-expression through writing, talking, and the arts helps us successfully work through with vulnerable emotions, giving us greater access to compassion, acceptance, joy, and resilience. Now, what I kind of was thinking about here with self-expression in the holiday season is we often will create crafts for children in order to talk about maybe our gratitude at Thanksgiving. We'll draw that Thanksgiving turkey and by tracing our hands, and the 4 feathers on it will mark different things we're grateful for. Why not incorporate some of those crafts and self-expression into the holidays this year? So creating that gratitude turkey of our hand, talking about the things that have brought us joy at the Christmas season, making an ornament, expressing art in creative way for our self-expression. The 5th pillar we're talking about for resiliency from Dr. Schwartz is embodiment. Now that might seem a little bit confusing, but what embodiment is being aware of our bodies and how we are interpreting our emotions, our feelings, where we are in this world. And actually what Dr. Schwartz says is reason alone is seldom sufficient to address post-traumatic stress. Embodiment practices invite mindful awareness of sensations, breath, and movement for the purpose of healing. Unfortunately, our culture tends towards stillness in the face of trauma. Our bodies need to process stressful events through breathe and movement. And when these things are ignored, the biological effects of stress can be really difficult. So within the holiday season, being aware of how you're feeling, how your body is feeling. I can't even help but think of when you're tasting that turkey or that ham or whatever meal you're having and you're together, being aware of how your body is feeling within that day. Now our last pillar of resiliency, number 6, by Dr. Arielle Schwartz, choice and control. This is what they say. The 6th pillar of resilience is to know that there are events in your life that remain within your control. Traumatic events typically occur completely outside of your control. You did not get a say in this, and it's common to feel powerless. It's understandable if there are times when you feel like giving up. However, resilience comes with knowing that there are still things in your life that you do have control over. And she suggests to stay engaged in your life is an act of courage when you know that loss can and will happen. So I'm just going to really quick one more time run through those 6 pillars of resilience. Growth mindset. How are we going to take this trauma, this event, and make it into something we can grow from? Emotional intelligence. Recognize how you're feeling emotionally, spiritually about an event so we can reclaim our life and move through it. Community connections. Having that SOS person, those people that are safe that we can communicate to and talk through different things. Self-expression. How we can communicate with ourselves how we're feeling, whether that's through art, through music, through journaling, finding a way to express yourself what you're feeling. Embodiment, and that is how are you feeling within your physical self? How is this impacting you? How can you breathe through and work through that? And the 6th, choice and control. You might not be in charge of the events that happen to you, but you can choose how to act because of it. And you can choose to take control of what you do have control of. Now, Dr. Arielle Schwartz also reminds us to think of resilience as a process, not just as an outcome. It would be far too easy to be overwhelmed and overcome if we tried it all at once. One of the other podcasts I work on, a guest gave some insight into working with kids that I loved and has helped me become more patient with my internal child and becomes a mantra for dealing with myself this year. Church News editor John Ryan Jensen pointed out, a batter is not a cake, meaning when you're in the process of becoming something, you cannot set your expectations so high you miss or don't enjoy the process. And that's part of the development and this development of resiliency. It is a process. Just like baking a cake, it takes time, measured effort, some heavy heat and pressure to become something else. So take your time and pace yourself as you use these 6 pillars of resilience. Going back to Dr. Schwartz, she advises, you can put the 6 pillars of resilience into action by identifying activities that you engage in during your daily or weekly routine that support you physically, emotionally, mentally, socially, and spiritually. While each one of these steps might seem small, collectively, the mindset and action steps associated with resilience can help you feel strong, relaxed, capable, and more connected to others in the world. There's a wide range of resilient behaviors, some of which will resonate with you and some will not. My invitation to you is to create your own personalized approach that helps you build your resilience each day. And now I add to that invitation, and particularly as you face the pressures of Thanksgiving, the comparisons that come with Christmas, that weight of New Year's resolutions. Look for the light. Waft away the clouds of darkness as much as you can and bask in the good. Thank you for listening and for humoring me today. And for me and my host, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, and we hope you have an abundance of found joy this holiday season, whatever you celebrate. And if you're listening and you like what you've heard, go find us on your favorite podcast platform and give us a like and review. If you have a story you want to share with us, if you've overcome or faced adversity in your life and you have tools that can help uplift others, please reach out to us. Michelle has links up on our social platforms to schedule and talk to her and to see if the story is a fit for our show. You can find us on Facebook at Relentlessly Resilient and at Instagram at Relentlessly Resilient Podcast. And it's crazy that I get to say this time. But remember, whatever you do, please remember to be kind. You have no idea the struggles others are dealing with in their lives. Have a great day.